Hello, my name is Mallory Shaw, and I'm the Research Development Coordinator at the Information School. In this presentation, I will share information about human subjects protections for research and the IRB review and approval process at the University of Washington. The topics that I will cover today are responsible conduct of research training, the historical background of human subjects regulations, the question of whether or not students need to submit IRB applications, the different types of IRB review, and how to submit a new IRB application. Responsible conduct of research training is provided by the Collaborative Institutional Training Initiative. Here are the instructions to set up your account. The iSchool Research Services Department recommends that all students engaged in human subjects research complete this training, but please note that this training is required for students working on NSF-funded research projects. The modern history of human subjects protections began with the discovery of the atrocities committed by Nazi doctors in war-related research experiments on prisoners in the concentration camps. After World War II, we began thinking as an international research community about the ethics and standards we should put in place to protect human subjects. This led to the creation of the Nuremberg Code of Medical Ethics. In the Tuskegee syphilis study conducted by the U.S. Public Health Service in Alabama from 1932 to 1972, researchers deceived and withheld medical treatment from African American sharecroppers and farmers who suffered from syphilis. When the details about the ethically questionable research conducted during the study came to light, the U.S. government called together a national commission to establish a code of research ethics for research involving human subjects. The commission issued the Belmont Report, which is the foundational document of the current system of U.S. human subjects protections. The Belmont Report outlines three basic ethical principles that investigators must balance when conducting research with human subjects. The first principle is beneficence. This means that you are ensuring that the risks of the research are reasonable in relationship to the anticipated benefits to the research subjects. The second is respect for persons. This means that individuals must be given the choice whether to participate in research, and they must be provided sufficient information and possess the mental competence to make that choice. The third principle is justice, and this means the equitable selection of research subjects. These principles make up the Code of Research Ethics that underlie the federal regulations that IRBs follow today. Variations of these principles will be referenced throughout the IRB protocol form. I will wrap up this section with two academic case studies. The first is the 1970 Tea Room Trade Study, in which a sociology graduate student observed men meeting other men for casual sexual encounters in public restrooms under the pretense that he was a lookout. He would record their license plate numbers so that he could look up where they lived at a later date. This is an example of a violation of the respect for persons principle. After completing the observational part of the study, he tracked down these men and pretended to be a health researcher in order to conduct in-home surveys. Essentially, deception was used to collect data, and once his dissertation was published as a book, people began to question his research methods. It's because of cases like this that there is a question about the use of deception on the IRB protocol form. The second case is the Tastes, Ties, and Time study, which is a more recent example of research that obtained personal information about individuals without their knowledge. In this study, Harvard sociologists downloaded the publicly available information of approximately 1,700 student profiles so that they could create a new data set. This data set included students' genders, home state, academic major, political and group affiliations, friend networks, photographs, and tastes in music, books, and film. Although no students were identified by name in the new data set, some data were specific enough to allow for re-identification of students by an outside researcher. This is something you want to think about even if you are not interacting with subjects directly, because if your data can be added up to meet the definition of a human subject, your research will require IRB review. At this point, you may be asking yourself, what is an IRB? An IRB is an institutional review board, which is a group registered with the federal government that is formally designated to review and monitor research involving human subjects. The Human Subjects Division, or HSD for short, supports the UW IRBs. They are located in the UW Tower, and there are about 45 staff members who provide support. There are 4 IRB committees, and an IRB consists of a diverse group of people, including UW faculty, staff, and students, scientists and non-scientists, and people who are or are not affiliated with the UW. If you think you might need to go through the IRB review process for your project, you will need to ask yourself, is it research? And does it involve human subjects? If the answer to those questions is yes, then you can start thinking about the level of review that will be required for the project, because this will determine how much of the IRB protocol form that you will need to fill out. If you get stuck trying to answer those first 2 questions, HSD has worksheets on their website that can help you work through that information. The regulatory definition of research is a systematic investigation, including development, testing, and evaluation, designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. This is the definition that HSD uses for reviewing IRB applications. Some examples of activities that may not be considered research are case reports or case studies, program evaluations, oral history, quality improvement, and public health surveillance. HSD defines a human subject as an individual about whom a researcher obtains data through interaction and/or private identifiable information. If your project is not considered research and does not involve human subjects, then IRB review is not required. So, if your project is considered research and involves human subjects, you will go ahead and apply for IRB approval unless the research is being conducted within the structure of a 1-quarter class. As soon as you take the research outside of the classroom, beyond the end date of that 1-quarter class, you will need to go through the IRB review process. This came up a few years ago with a PhD student who started her research project in a 1-quarter class, but her faculty member encouraged her to continue the project after that quarter. She continued her work and submitted poster proposals to 2 conferences which were accepted. She also had a paper accepted for publication. Once these posters and papers were accepted, she was asked for IRB approval documentation because her research involved human subjects. Since she did not go through the IRB review process and did not get approval to conduct her research, she had to pull her posters from the conferences and she could not publish her work. It's important to keep this information in mind as you are working on your project because you cannot apply for retroactive IRB approval. There are 3 levels of IRB review: exempt, expedited review, and full board review. The level of review is dependent upon 2 factors: research subject population and research methods. As you work through the IRB application, you might notice that some of the questions are a bit repetitive, but keep in mind that HSD is really trying to get a sense of your subject population and your research methods so that they can move forward with the appropriate level of review. Exempt status applications are the most common type of application that we see in the iSchool. And although this type of research does not require IRB review, you still need to go through the application process to receive that official HSD determination. Here are some examples of research methods that would be exempt from IRB review. We have classroom observation, interviews, task completion, and observation of public behavior. Please note that there is no use of vulnerable populations in this level of review. Research projects that involve psychological or medical intervention or use vulnerable populations will automatically move forward to one of the other higher levels of review. Vulnerable populations are groups of subjects who may be at a higher risk for effects of undue influence or coercion on their decision about whether to participate in a research study, or who may be unable to understand the consenting process. Vulnerable populations are anyone under the age of 18, prisoners, pregnant women, and people who are cognitively impaired. To apply for IRB review, you will submit your application in Zipline, which is the electronic IRB system. Ask your faculty advisor if they are registered in Zipline because they will be involved in the review process. To log into Zipline, you will go to the Human Subjects Division page on the UW Research website, and you will click the button that says Zipline, the online IRB system, which will take you to this page here. You will use your UW NetID and password to sign in. There are a lot of great resources available here, like a Zipline training site that you can use to practice submitting an IRB application, as well as the various forms you will need to complete your submission. This is the first page of the IRB application form. Be sure to use the most current version of the application. There are 3 parts to a Zipline submission. First, there are these Zipline Smart Forms, which capture basic information about the study and organize the submission of study documents. For example, the Funding Sources Smart Form is where you provide and upload any information about funding for your study. Second is the IRB Protocol Form. And finally, attached other study documents which refers to your study-related documents like consent forms, recruitment materials, and interview questions. To start your Zipline submission, you will log in and click the Create New Study button on your dashboard. The required SmartForms sections are marked with a red asterisk, and you will upload your IRB application form on this page. As I mentioned before, your faculty advisor must sign off on your research, so you want to make sure that they are registered in Zipline. You can also add me as a guest in Zipline if you would like me to track the progress of your application. If you are required to submit status reports for your study, you will receive email reminders from HSD. If you want to make changes to your study, you simply revise your existing documents. You're going to open up your approved IRB protocol document, turn on track changes, and revise the IRB protocol document to reflect the new study procedures. You'll do the same to update or revise your recruitment and consent materials. You'll use the Update button to replace the current versions of these documents in Zipline with the new track changes, and then you'll submit the modification for review. Reports of new information will include things like adverse events and data safety and monitoring board reports. There's a lot of guidance about how to submit R&I in Zipline on the HSD website. Here are some common mistakes that can cause issues with your application review. Incomplete applications. Be sure to answer all of the required questions. If one of the required questions does not apply to your research project, you will enter not applicable in the answer field. Missing documents. Pay close attention to the submission instructions and make sure you upload the documents that are necessary to the correct places in Zipline. Using too much technical jargon. Try to communicate your project as though you're asking a layperson to duplicate it without prior knowledge on the subject. Not planning ahead. Turnaround times tend to be unpredictable, usually 3 to 4 weeks. Please keep that in mind before you begin your research. If you are interested in receiving the HSD newsletter, here is the email address to sign up, and here is the link to the HSD website. If you have questions, you can send an email to hsdinfo@uw.edu, or you can contact me at mdshaw87@uw.edu. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation, and take care.